Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. It's time to hello, table 3. Sorry to be talking while you're interrupting. It's an old Rex Hunt line. Sorry. Steal them if you can use them. Ladies and gents, on this wonderful 20th night of the Archbishop's dinner, it's wonderful now to introduce our guest speaker, Andrew Bolt, Australia's most read political commentator. You'll read him in the Herald Sun, right across Australia, the Daily Telegraph, the Courier Mail, the West Australian, the Adelaide Advertiser. He also runs Australia's most popular political blog, and on weeknights he hosts the Bolt Report on Sky News, and also a show on 3AW, my old radio station, that goes right around Australia on Macquarie Radio at 8 o'clock with Steve Price. It's the top rating show in Melbourne and Sydney. If you haven't had a listen, it's always very entertaining. He has 2 books of columns. One of them is called Worth Fighting For. Oh, hello. I'm getting embarrassed. Oh, well, come up and say hello. No, I have got one important thing to say. That'll teach you for coming up early. The gentleman now on my left was born in Adelaide, of Dutch origin. But there is one thing I do want to say about Andrew, who I know pretty well, and that is that it's been a fairly quiet week in Canberra, as you can hear. And he had a call from the producers of Sky News yesterday to say, we want you to do a special show on Friday night because that's the day we think everything's going to blow. So at 7 o'clock tonight, he ran a special program for Sky News that I don't think he knew about until the last 24 hours. It would have been a pretty easy job to ring Carmen and Val and say, it's all just a bit too hard. Pretty impressive effort. He's doing it on an honorary capacity. Please welcome Andrew Bolt.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I should preface it by knowing that while you don't look like the average get-up crowd, I should acknowledge that I can't imagine that you all share my views. I will offend some of you. You're not complicit in my error by sitting there silent. You don't need to yell and throw things. You can do that at the end when I'm gone. I felt obliged to say that because I grew up reading Don Camillo books, and I have this mad image of muscular Christians sitting in front of me, some taking umbrage of what I might say. It's my views. You're not guilty by sharing them. And in a way, coming here is like exorcising a ghost, or at least so I thought until yesterday or this morning when I was asked to do the Sky News show. I thought, oh heavens, why is it whenever I talk at the Archbishop's dinner, it always goes kerpluff? The last time I remember, and unfortunately some of you do too, because you've reminded me already, which was, I sometimes, and Sally will say, my wife will tell you, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night thinking, remember the night when I got lost going to the Archbishop's dinner and I went to Flemington Racecourse instead of this one? Oh my goodness. And you know, the reason that sticks in my mind is that was the night, this is absolutely true, I realised that age had suddenly caught up with me. My eyesight had gone and I could no longer read a street directory. It's just, it comes back in a loop at night sometimes. The moment I realised I couldn't read the street directory, had no idea where I was, and there was Archbishop Pell pacing, and I did not want to cross Archbishop Pell. He was quite forgiving, and then I thought, God goodness, how am I going to make tonight? But anyway, there I am here. My grandfather was a church warden, so I feel quite honoured to be here. I feel like I'm in my element. I feel I'm true to my roots. I think I've always had it in me to be a priest, but I could never do the Latin. So now that I've got even an Archbishop captive listening to me, this is just wonderful. This really is exercising the ghost. I shall start my reading with two quotes from the Bible. A phrase that George Pell had for one of his books that I launched. Be not afraid. And the other is, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds. I'll start with the latest from Canberra, because in a way it's a metaphor for what's happening to your church, but also to the wider society. Where you've had, first you had Tony Abbott, of course, who, being a man, a conservative man, a good man, a friend of mine, when he became Prime Minister, he felt he had to, and he did. That's politics. Compromise with the left of the party to keep them all together. And he was held to stand for nothing because he walked away, he had to really, from things like the ANC, free speech reform, other things. And people said, what are you good for? He's deserted by the Conservatives, you might recall, as well as the left. He stood for nothing. And Malcolm Turnbull's gone the other way. He dragged the party too far to the left. When he realised his mistake, he tried to repair it and started to go to the right, and he dropped things to the Republic and all that kind of stuff. And he was told, well, that's the knock on him. He stands for nothing. And so they got rid of him as well. And it's happening where we're seeing institutions trying to make compromises, which is the essence of good government, really, in one sense, but then losing that idea that people seem to be craving, that they stand for something, they argue for something. What causes this is hard to tell. The social media obviously has had an effect. Immigration's had an effect. Multiculturalism, the breaking down of Christianity, where it now represents almost, well, just over half of the population. We're living not so much in a multi-ethnic, multicultural society, but in a multi-ethic society. Everyone's got their own ideas of what is the good and what is the bad, and everyone's quite insistent upon it too. You're seeing that in politics, with growth of minor parties. But you're also seeing it everywhere else. People are looking for meaning, but they're less inclined to accept the meaning of anyone else. It's very difficult. And then there's global warming, which of course is the replacement faith. It's all in the... People will say, look, I know that some of you will... Yes, there's been a mild warming of the earth. That's absolutely correct. I'm not doing that. But most of the argument is pushed in almost theological terms. I saw Stevie Wonder the other day blame the death of Aretha Franklin on global warming. She actually had pancreatic cancer. But he said, it is our lack of belief in global warming that has caused this. It's got to affect the world. Hate and all that kind of stuff, and the heat too. I noted how he said it. It's lack of faith in global warming, not global warming itself. And you see, Al Gore, I mean, I once had the pleasure of annoying him intensely when I asked him an awkward question in a conference in America. I've never seen a man go that shade of beetroot red. Apart from Kevin Rudd once when I was talking to him. But you look at his message. He's a holy rolling Baptist, and he says, repent your relationship with the earth. Mend your relationship with the earth, for the end of the world is nigh. You may as well put it on a sandwich board, borrow one from some guy from 50 years ago, because the message is the same. So let me tell you about a book I've been reading. Right now I'm doing a wonderful series for the IPA. A friend of mine, John Roskin, who heads the IPA, we're doing podcasts on the great books. And we've put out the first already, Bleak House, and we recorded the fourth, because we're backing them up because we're slow readers. So, we've just done Don Quixote. I don't know if you've read Don Quixote, Miguel Cervantes. It is absolutely one of the most sensational books ever written. But the And the Renaissance came to Spain, so it's about 400 years old. Fantastic book. Don Quixote is a man who, at the age of about 50, decided, he went mad from reading too much, and he decided that he would be a knight-errant. In fact, he was a knight-errant from the medieval past. They'd gone, but he was going to revisit it. He was going to get on his horse, wear a suit of armour, and with his trusty squire, Sancho Panza, he would go and right wrongs, relieve the agonies of widows, protect women, and come to the succour of all those in need. He was completely mad. You may know some of these. He saw a windmill as a giant, for instance. He saw a flock of sheep as an invading army. He saw a barber's basin as the famous helmet of a knight long dead, and he wore it on his head. He was completely mad, at least when it came to knight-errantry. But in this quest for meaning in his life, he had a dignity. And people were really amazed and admired this knight, the sorrowful knight of La Mancha. But to exist in his fantasy, he had to invent enemies. The windmill, the sheep, some servants of some woman that he persuaded himself were trying to abduct her. And how opposite, I thought, to today, when so many people are looking for meaning in their lives and inventing enemies. I should know because I am one of the enemies they invent. They see fascists suddenly among us and they attack them in the street. This alleged fascist biffed back, but they see also the earth burning in front of their eyes when you actually can't see much physical evidence of this at all. They're inventing so many enemies. They're inventing also so many evil institutions like the Catholic Church. I think you now exist, the Church, and particularly priests, as the evil that people are combating, which is a remarkable transition in just 50 years. You're not seeing the civilisers, but the predators. Now, obviously, they're seizing on things that have happened, are scandalous, of which the Church has apologised and tried to reform. But they're seizing actually on events that at their worst occurred 40, 50 years ago. Very few, when it comes to the Catholic Church, very, very few recent examples, very few. And probably fewer than you would find, say, in a state school. I find this rather scary. Now, I mentioned George Pell a couple of times, and people, I think, fear what I might say next. George Pell is a friend of mine, and I'm not going to comment on his case. My wife looked at me very anxiously when I just said I was going to mention this, told me not to. There are multiple court orders to say you can't publish anything. I think I should be fine just talking to a select group of friends. And if anyone wants to publish this outside, let them speak now. Good, then we're all agreed you won't do that. Doesn't protect me, but at least I know you were rascals, and you will know that I know you're rascals if you do. George Pell, again, I'm not going to, he may be guilty, he may not, that is for a court to decide. I'm not going to discuss the evidence, I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff. But what I found remarkable in the case of George Pell, talking about inventing enemies, that you need to believe, and the crowd mentality that feeds these things. Without discussing any of the allegations against him, I remember ones that were made that fell by the wayside. How is it that he was accused of being warned, turning a deaf ear to a warning from a boy who knocked on his door when that door was not his and he was not there? That's been proved. How is it that he was accused of turning another deaf ear to a boy who told him about sexual abuse in a year when he wasn't here, he was in Italy? How is it that he was accused of overhearing at a mass joking about a real pedophile priest at a mass that he did not give? He wasn't there. How was it that he was accused? And this was repeated in multiple places, not retracted in multiple places, but reported, particularly on the ABC. He was accused of having offered a bribe and a deal to a man at a time when the bribe and the deal were absolutely impossible because the police were actually on it. It made no sense. An accusation dismissed by the Royal Commission. I could actually mention more, but and I will when I'm legally able to do so, but they fall in the same pattern. Again, this is not a comment on the allegations he's still facing, but I find it absolutely extraordinary that so many allegations were made, and more than I can mention, that simply, absolutely, categorically, weren't true. Now, I'm not accusing the accusers of lying. Absolutely not. No, I'm not. I heard someone giggle in a way that I suspect one judge once did, when even when I profess something I believe, they say, no, you can't possibly believe that. Don't you find it interesting? There is a wanting to believe and an absolute conviction that something is true because it fits a narrative. And the narrative right now is the Catholic Church is not a force of civilization, it is a force of evil. It cannot be trusted. You now hear people in courts pleading as an excuse for looting poor boxes, helping themselves to the money, spending it on whatever. I was abused. No one knows if that's true or not. You hear an actress go on John Fane's show and celebrate the burning down of a church because once upon a long, long, long time ago, a pedophile priest had been there. Never mind that it's a viable community, a flourishing community that's doing good and helping people and raising money for the poor. There was a desire to see the evil, not the good. And all this makes me wonder, and particularly at a time when you are celebrating so many young men who want to devote their lives to the church, at a time when its reputation is so poor, when they know they will not be looked at in the street by some as bringers of good but doers of evil. You have to celebrate the men that have the courage to give themselves to the church at this time. And you have to be grateful because never before has the church been so in need of such men. But it also means that all of you have really got to conduct yourself differently to what you may well, in times of good, have assumed. When it was easy, when most Australians, the vast majority, were Christians, and the Catholic Church was riding high, you could rely on being the established faith. I know not formally established like Church of England, but very established. And you could rely on authority and cultural weight and the force of thou shalt not to keep people in line and to hopefully transmit the faith, usually sexually transmit. Child of the children of the parents become Catholic and you could assume all the rest. I don't think that's any more the case. And I suspect the church may have to learn to conduct itself like a persecuted faith. And I don't want to exaggerate, not persecuted like in China or something like that, but culturally persecuted. I think that's probably clear. You've had an Archbishop already dragged before a human rights tribunal for simply preaching the faith. You will see more of that. You are the persecuted faith in that regard. And I think when you go like that, it changes. You can't rely on decree, authority, rely on tradition, be lazy, and let others do the work. To go back to let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds. When you look at the first 3 centuries of the Catholic Church, the Christian Church generally really then, how did that bloom? I read a fabulous book by Rodney Stark on the rise of Christianity. And when you see it, it was the deeds. And not just the deeds, how people saw those deeds and were amazed and inspired. During the great plagues of that time, even Galen, the famous Roman physician, when the plagues hit Rome, he would retreat to his country estate. Everyone headed for the hills if they had the money to do it. And the poor die where they may. Turns out in a plague you can survive the plague, but you do need good nursing, as well as a good constitution and a bit of luck. What did the Christians do in the plague? They stayed, and they helped, and they nursed. And those that survived were seen as miracles. Maybe they were. People were amazed. It also helped the Christians survive in ways that the pagans didn't. So did other edicts of the church, the early church. Edicts against abortion, euthanasia, infanticide, particularly infanticide. Their birth rate was consequently much greater. They outbred the pagans as well. And they had a message of emancipation for women, which really attracted women, who themselves are the mothers to the next generation. In all these ways, the church inspired, and by their teachings, they actually thrived as well. This is important. Living a life that people see is better. And it's up to you to do it. You have to be exemplars of your faith. By your deeds, they shall know you. By your fruits, they shall know you. Christians also then didn't fight. They didn't do what the Jews so drastically did in the revolt back in Jerusalem. They took arms against the oppressors and were slaughtered. You can go and see Masada still, the last holdout there of Jews in arms. The Christians, though, preferred to be martyrs. Maybe you have to be martyrs now. It's now what's done to people sometimes speaks so much more clearly than what they do themselves. I notice all the people, you hold a meeting here in Melbourne and you get the violent so-called anti-fascists demonstrating by the violence. They are the fascists. They are the dangers that they warn of. And I see Christian meetings, Australian Christian lobby meetings too, facing the same thing. In the end, Don Quixote, right? A lot of people judged him mad, but they thought he was good. By his goodness, even though people didn't see what he saw, people don't see what you see. Even though they didn't see what he saw, they saw he was good. And there's a line in Don Quixote which I think speaks so much about this. The truth usually is found in the kernel of a nut. Break open the kernel, there's the truth. But his truth was the light that shines from that nut and illustrates everything around him. In Don Quixote's case, it was the meanness of those who teased him, the squalid lack of faith in those that had none, and mocked him for his. And I think for the Catholic Church, you too, it's not the truth in the nut, but the light that it shines out. And you're the keepers of it. Thank you so much.
Wow, it was amazing to look across the length and breadth of the room as Andrew delivered that powerful oration and touched on many most interesting areas. He's a polarising figure in what he writes and what he says. He's a provocative figure, but as I'm sure you found and understood tonight, he's also got a marvellous intellect and a really great appreciation of maybe what the Catholic faith is at the moment going through. And I think he's really picked some wonderfully interesting points there for us all to reflect on. So Andrew, on behalf of us all, on behalf of the Knights of the Southern Cross, at our 20th dinner, and certainly on behalf of the Archbishop and all of us here, thank you for a fantastic speech. Well done. Folks, silent auction closes in 5 minutes. Thank you again, Andrew Bott.